Our main character, Makoto, reflects on various cliched beginnings in isekai stories, such as being hit by a truck and meeting charming heroines. However, he explains that his own story has mean-spirited heroines, and he is constantly being defeated. He believes he has the worst luck, and his life has become a joke. Looking back at his past, we see Makoto living an ordinary and peaceful day. One night, though, he falls asleep and finds himself conversing with a god named Tsukuyomi. The god explains that he will transform Makoto into a hero and send him to another world, where he will be handed over to a goddess. Tsukuyomi reveals that Makoto's parents are from that other world. Due to certain circumstances, Makoto's parents made a contract with the goddess, agreeing to give her whatever is most precious to them at some point. If Makoto refuses, then one of his sisters will be taken instead. Reluctantly, he agrees to go but makes one urgent request. The god already knows what he needs, and he assures Makoto that he will dispose of the numerous adult products that Makoto owns. Tsukuyomi intends to grant him all the power he can, just as the goddess starts prematurely taking Makoto. Tsukuyomi warns that the goddess is a bit peculiar, so Makoto will have to exercise patience. He arrives in the other world, where the goddess explains that demons are causing havoc, which is why she summoned him. However, the goddess can't help but laugh at Makoto's masked face and calls him an ugly duckling. Makoto's appearance repulses and annoys her to such an extent that she never wants to lay eyes on him again. She consents to let Makoto reside on the outskirts of her world, as she has other dependable heroes to rely on. The goddess has no intention of wasting any power on him but does grant him the ability to comprehend all languages except for human language. With the hope that his fall will prove fatal, she banishes him, unable to endure his unsightly visage any longer. Tsukuyomi briefly suspends Makoto's descent to apologize for the goddess's behavior. He assures Makoto that being in this world isn't all that bad. The world he inhabited before was a harsh and desolate realm beyond the god's protection. Makoto's magical abilities and physical body were heavily strained. However, now that he has entered this new world, he will be freed from that burden and should possess considerable power. Tsukuyomi mentions that the goddess has revoked his hero status, granting him unrestricted freedom. And he officially bestows Machito with freedom in this unfamiliar realm, which he eagerly embraces. However, 3 days pass without any significant events unfolding. Makoto has yet to find sustenance or encounter another person. Suddenly, he hears desperate cries for help and willingly rushes to aid the distressed voice. To his surprise, Makoto finds himself rescuing a peculiar creature resembling a pig and astonishes himself by swiftly defeating the monster with a single kick. The pig introduces herself as Emma the Orc, and both Makoto and Emma are bewildered by their mutual ability to understand each other. Makoto attempts to convey his friendly intentions, but Emma points out his lack of gentleness. He explains that he is in search of a human village, yet Emma reveals that such villages do not exist in their current location known as the Wasteland, situated at the world's edge. Emma discloses her own purpose, which is to journey to the Divine Mountain and offer herself as a sacrifice to Shin in hopes of dispelling a destructive fog engulfing her village. She kindly offers to take him somewhere for recovery, and Makoto appreciates her kindness, considering the possibility of saving her. However, he quickly realizes that if he rescues her, she would become his first heroine. Emma guides him to a nearby eating place where a few individuals comment on Makoto's presumed demonic blood due to his unattractive appearance. Makoto then requests Emma to teach him some magic. She performs the spell, but clarifies that it's challenging for her since it's in a language she doesn't speak. Fortunately, Machito possesses the ability to speak and understand all languages, effortlessly casting the spell. Emma is astonished by this and asks about his level, but Makoto has no clue. Curious onlookers gather as Emma prepares to assess his level. She speculates that he must be at least level 2 or 300, yet everyone's hopes are dashed when they discover he's merely level 1. The next morning, Machito leaves a note explaining that he has taken the list of spells Emma gave him. He plans to journey up the mountain to confront Shin and see what he can do about the situation. Makoto expresses his preference for resolving the situation through conversation with Shin, but he still practices his combat skills in case a fight becomes inevitable. To his surprise, he discovers that he doesn't need to vocalize the incantation, as a simple attack inflicts significant damage. Nearby demons, who had been using Shin's name to intimidate and control others, confess that they were merely employing scare tactics. But now Makoto destroyed Shin's dwelling, which will undoubtedly anger the real Shin and lead to its wrath. Soon enough, the true form of Shin is revealed, a formidable dragon that launches an assault on Makoto within a blinding mist. Remarkably, Makoto manages to evade the dragon's attacks, pondering whether this newfound ability is the power granted by Tsukuyomi. Makoto uses his fire attack, but the Shin isn't afraid. Surprisingly, it gets hurt and shocked since it's supposed to be fire resistant. Makoto then uses his desperation punch and backhand attacks. The dragon is puzzled about his opponent's nature because it's taking damage despite being invincible. Makoto lands a powerful uppercut, but the Shin declares victory by using a memory illusion on Makoto. In this illusion, Makoto recalls a memory of his crush asking him out on a date. Despite listing his flaws, his crush suggests giving it a try. Meanwhile, the dragon peeks into Makoto's mind and discovers he is actually from another world, sparking its curiosity. Although his crush admires him more and desires to spend time together, Makoto realizes the memory is false. The truth is that he made her cry that day. The illusion breaks, and Makoto begins to comprehend the power granted by Tsukuyomi. He can create a shield around himself and manipulate the space within it. Using this incredible power, Makoto breaks free. Surprisingly, Shin no longer feels hostility towards him. Shin apologizes and proposes a contract, explaining that both parties will gain empowerment relative to their individual strength. Shin expresses a desire to become Makoto's loyal companion and assures him of not letting him down. Shin reveals a strong curiosity about Makoto's memories, leaving Makoto curious about what Shin might have seen. The dragon doesn't disclose the details of what he witnessed but advises Makoto that accepting the contract would be beneficial for him. Makoto decides to agree, and the dragon proposes a contract with a 50-50 split. However, Makoto effortlessly overpowers Shin, prompting the dragon to suggest a 70-30 split. Even this arrangement proves inadequate, so Shin proposes an 80-20 split. This strikes a better balance, although Shin essentially becomes Makoto's subordinate. Nevertheless, Shin doesn't mind and eagerly anticipates the adventures he will experience with his new master. As Shin transforms into Makoto's first heroine, Makoto learns about Shin's incredible abilities, such as manipulating space, reading memories, and excelling in illusions. Makoto expresses a desire to ride on Shin's back, but Shin explains that the 80-20 contract forces a weaker being to adopt the appearance of the stronger. Shin then opens a dimensional gateway to a demi-world which she had full control of. As they enter the demi-world, Shin doesn't recognize it since it's supposed to be empty. To their surprise, it's filled with familiar things that Makoto is aware of, and he can even sense its vastness. Makoto realizes that this demi-world can only be reached through Shin's mist and suspects that the troublesome goddess won't be able to interfere with him there. He contemplates the idea of building a city in this perfect place to live. Upon their return, they find Emma, who is searching for Makoto to prevent him from fighting Shin. However, Shin shocks her by explaining that they have formed a contract and Makoto is the master now. Emma initially finds it hard to believe, but she is convinced when Shin presents her with a dragon scale. She expresses her gratitude, and the other orcs do too. One of the orcs wants to thank Makoto in some way, but Shin assures him that it won't be necessary. Instead, Shin asks if he would like to live on a rich and fertile land. The next day, Makoto is surprised to see that the orcs are packed and ready to move to the demi-world. Shin has taken the liberty of transporting various creatures there as well, but Makoto is concerned that she might have brought along dangerous ones too. A child declares that she will protect everyone, which shocks Makoto and leads him to think she is Shin's daughter. However, Shin clarifies that the child is just a fragment of herself. The orcs express their enthusiasm to support their savior, prompting Shin to absorb them and the entire village into the demi-world. She announces that they are the very first residents of their new city. Makoto ponders whether Shin plans to absorb everyone they encounter. As days pass, Makoto gains control over all the elements, with a particular affinity for water. Shin's fondness for historical dramas becomes evident as she watches episodes from Makoto's memories. She complains that all Makoto does is practice magic, and he explains that it's because she doesn't allow him to assist the villagers. Since he is supposed to be the master of the land, Makoto requests that Shin refrain from watching more historical dramas for the day. In an embarrassing moment, she accidentally accesses one of his memories. Shin realizes the inconvenience of directly watching shows from his memories since he is unable to move, and decides to attempt creating a TV to store his recorded memories. Shin accidentally leaves some recorded memories open, and Makoto recalls that his parents were from this world. He emphasizes that he now has a goal, to follow in his parents' footsteps, and declares that he won't be a useless nobody as the goddess desired. Nearby orcs are struggling to clear a tough area for Makoto and Shin to live in. Makoto expresses gratitude to the orcs for constructing a house for him and draws a short sword. He decides to name the power bestowed upon him by Tsukuyomi as Kai. Makoto creates a zone around himself and infuses the sword with the strengthening property. The sword effortlessly slices through the hard trees, and Makoto strengthens himself to move them. Using Kai, he heals an orc who points out that he didn't use mana to do it, prompting Machito to realize the overwhelming power of Kai. He discovers that he cannot heal himself with it, but that's not a concern. Suddenly, a dwarf appears with an injury and explains that the demi-plane was attacked by a peculiar creature. The monster, known as the Black Spider of Disaster, appears to be drawn by Machito's blood. Shin explains that she cannot fight because she is carrying a dwarf and lacks a sword. Makoto takes on the responsibility while Shin protects the orcs and the dwarf. The Black Spider of Disaster is an ancient creature driven by insatiable hunger, causing it to lose its sanity and devour anything in its path. Makoto deduces that the spider may be vulnerable to fire and successfully severs one of its legs. He plans to use fire on his sword to attack, but the spider surprises him by swiftly regenerating. No matter how many attacks Makoto unleashes, the creature continues to regenerate and stays out of his reach. Despite the challenge, Makoto notices a growing calmness within himself during battles, attributing it to his accumulated experience. Unfortunately, the spider starts absorbing his attacks to heal, even rendering the powerful weapons of elder dwarves ineffective against it. Makoto attempts a potent fire spear volley, but the spider instantly heals once again. In a last-ditch effort, Makoto employs his kai as a defense, but it shatters. Realizing he is on the verge of defeat, Makoto refuses to accept it and surprises everyone by breaking free and unleashing a powerful attack. Shin ponders if these are charged fire attacks, only to realize that Makoto is actually launching multiple projectiles and simultaneously charging new ones. Machito can continue firing his attacks as long as he has enough mana. It becomes evident that Makoto has been holding back for the sake of everyone. Makoto unleashes a remarkable water attack that deals massive damage. However, he collapses, shocking Shin as the spider regenerates once again. Shin realizes she won't arrive in time to help. Fortunately, the spider merely desires to embrace Makoto as it derives pleasure from pain. Shin acknowledges Makoto's great performance. She suggests that Makoto rest while reminding her old acquaintance, the spider, of her ability to transform into a human. The spider expresses a desire to stay with Makoto forever. Shin explains that she is essentially Makoto's servant. The spider is amazed to see that their contract transforms Shin into a human. Shin invites the spider to undergo the same transformation. They decide to establish the contract for now and seek the Makoto's consent later. Makoto wakes up later, astonished to find his wound healed. He is even more surprised when his newfound heroine pledges a lifetime of service to him. Makoto can't believe it when he learns that the girl is actually the spider, as he believed that consent was required to form contracts. Shin remarks that it's preferable to being chased by a giant spider, and Makoto sarcastically acknowledges Shin's loyalty. Shin explains that elder dwarves are well known for crafting sacred artifacts, while the dwarf introduces himself as Baron, and he expresses gratitude to Makoto for saving his village from the spider. He requests permission for his people to relocate to the demi-world, and Makoto promptly agrees. However, Shin intervenes to explain the conditions. The dwarves must provide weapons, pay taxes in the future, and, most importantly, acknowledge Makoto as their lord. Baron agrees to the terms, and Shin gives him some dragon scales to help persuade his people. Later, Makoto reveals that he spends hours each day outside the demi-world, tracing the footsteps of his parents in search of human settlements. He spots one in the distance but is interrupted by Shin, who urgently calls for him. However, it turns out they only wanted names for themselves. Makoto suggests calling them Spider and Dragon, but they dislike those names. He then comes up with a name for Shin as Tamoi, the female samurai, which she loves. The spider affectionately refers to Machito as her husband, much to his dismay, and he gives her the name Mio. He explains that a combination of words zero and water in another language, symbolizing his affinity for the element and making her feel special. Subsequently, they reveal their names to the citizens, leaving Makoto perplexed by the presence of various unfamiliar species. The people in the city collectively decide to address Makoto as the young master. The chief of the dwarfs introduces himself while remarking on Makoto's peculiar face. He suspects that Makoto was sent on a mission by the goddess, but Makoto clarifies that she simply discarded him like trash. The dwarfs also express their dislike for the god and highlight how serving Makoto is much more interesting. Tamoi then steps forward to introduce her loyal followers, the mist lizards, who possess both air and water attributes, making them extremely powerful. Mio introduces her follower Alka and explains that hunger drove them mad, but they regained their senses. Makoto has no idea what the essence means, but Mio shocks him by explaining that it refers to the blood she took from him and demonstrates how they absorb it. Makoto advises them to live anywhere on the land without fighting over it. He cuts his speech short, feeling an urgent need to find humans like himself to interact with. He heads towards the village he had seen earlier and quickly comes across a villager who runs away in fear. Perplexed, he checks if there is a monster behind him. Finally reaching the village, Makoto notices that the villagers appear to be preparing for an attack. They start attacking Makoto, but neither party understands each other's language. Makoto is frustrated with the goddess for letting him understand every language except the human language. Emma explains that the human language is called common because humans are the most prosperous species in the world. Everyone else can understand the human language, but Makoto argues that not being able to understand it is no reason for them to attack him. The others clarify that his appearance, not the language barrier, is what led to their attack. They laugh when he assumes it's because of his face. They agree that his face is unique, but it's his overwhelming amount of mana that scared them. His intense mana emission distorts the area around him, and to humans, it might appear as if several demon kings suddenly appeared. Emma tries to teach him how to suppress his mana, but he still looks like a group of demon kings. Makoto refuses to give up and declares his determination to master the common language. A week passes, and he has only managed to learn how to read and write in common. 2 weeks pass, and the dwarf gives Makoto a ring that absorbs an excessive amount of mana, enough to kill anyone who wears it. It's a cursed ring that needs to be removed immediately, but it breaks as soon as Makoto puts it on. The dwarf feels disappointed in himself and vows to create a ring that will surely kill Makoto. After some time, the dwarf presents another ring that can absorb and compress mana. The ring changes color from white to red, indicating that it has reached its limit and needs to be taken off. Makoto confidently declares that they are prepared as he puts on his disguise, but quickly realizes how conspicuous they appear. Nevertheless, they proceed with their plan and enter the village. Makoto assumes the role of a wealthy merchant's son who sells apples, so they head to the market. Makoto admires the beauty of the humans in the village and laments his own unfortunate appearance. They attempt to register at an adventurer's guild, but the clerk remarks on Machito's peculiar attire. The girls come to his defense, explaining that he is the son of a wealthy merchant. They mention a curse that forces him to wear a mask and prevents him from speaking. Makoto is forced to use magic to communicate since he cannot speak. The clerk apologizes and explains that all adventurers start at rank E in the guild. However, they have the opportunity to take on special jobs that can advance their rank by 1. Makoto realizes that this system carries both high risk and high reward. The top adventurer in their guild is called Ace, who holds a double SS rank and is at level 444. Tamoi and Mio undergo level testing using scrolls, but the available scrolls only go up to level 400. They bring out a larger scroll that measures up to level 16. To everyone's absolute astonishment, Tamoi's level is 1320 and Mio's is 1500. Makoto feels a bit down being the lower of the two, but it is revealed that they have the highest levels within the entire Adventurers Guild. The next highest level belongs to Sophia the Dragon Slayer, a triple S ranked adventurer at level 920. Makoto wonders if his level has increased at all, but he discovers that he is still at level 1. Afterwards, they head to an inn and Makoto calculates the cost. They find out that staying for one night costs 6 gold, which is an exorbitant amount of money. Shin negotiates with the clerk by showing her level and pointing out the deteriorating condition of the floorboards. The clerk agrees to lower the price. Later, the group discusses how everything in the village seems unusually expensive. Makoto then notices that they have been followed since leaving the guild. Knowing that merchants are easy targets, Machito prevents Tamoi from going to dinner because she has been assigned to guard their belongings. She complies with his request and stays behind to fulfill her duty. Later, Machito and Mio return from dinner and encounter a young girl who stops them. Mio tells the girl, Rinen, that they have no business with them and asks her to step aside. Rinen shares that she has a request for them. Since Makoto cannot speak the human language, he uses magic to communicate. Rinen explains that her sister went missing a month ago and they were kicked out from where they were staying. Makoto realizes that this town seems suspicious. Meanwhile, Tamoi protects their wagon, filled with goods, and tries to control herself, realizing that her sword might be too sharp. Tamoi brings one of the attackers back to the inn for interrogation, but Makoto scolds her for going too far with some of them. Rinen expresses her gratitude for their kindness and notices that Makoto can speak. Unfortunately, they can't understand each other and their conversation sounds like gibberish. Rinen shows a sketch of her sister, and Makoto compliments her drawing skills. They all prepare for bed. Later, Mio returns and notices that Makoto looks a bit strange. Makoto explains that the thieves they encountered were also at the guild earlier. Tamoi examines the thief's memory to discover the location where Rinen's sister is being held. Makoto strongly urges the girls to go and rescue her. When alone, Makoto reflects on how he couldn't join the rescue mission because he fears losing control of himself due to Rinen's sister resembling his high school crush. Meanwhile, the two girls discuss Makoto's aggressive behavior upon seeing the drawing of Rinen's sister. Mio wonders if they are acquaintances, but Tamoi clarifies that Makoto doesn't have any acquaintances in this world. Tamoi reveals that she knows this because she delved into Makoto's memories, which makes Mio feel extremely jealous. Nonetheless, they both agree that finding the girl is necessary to alleviate Makoto's intensity. Back in the village, Makoto compliments Rinen on her carriage driving skills and assumes that her sister must be proud. Rinen then reminisces about a time when her sister frequently put them in debt to prepare for an adventure. However, her sister would always return shortly after, admitting her quest had failed. On this occasion, she instructs Rinen to go to another town alone, as she is in trouble with her debt. Unfortunately, Rinen gets caught before she can leave. We then witness Rinen's sister explaining that their family has always been adventurous. She embarked on a journey to the far corners of the world's wasteland to recover their family's lost honor after one of their ancestors lost a cherished short sword. Regrettably, she confesses her failure and bids farewell to Rinen. At that moment, Tamoi and Mio arrive. Mio deduces that they must have used a girl named Toa for magic experiments and is impressed when Toa is instantly healed. As they attempt to make their escape, an unexpected encounter awaits them, the city's renowned adventurer, Ace. In the village, Rinen's realization dawns upon her, unveiling the peculiarities of Makoto's speechlessness and unconventional attire, fueling her growing fear towards him. Sensing something amiss, Rinen mentions an urgent errand at home, but unbeknownst to her, Makoto employs his mystical key to uncover her secret rendezvous with the band of thieves. Rinen divulges to them the contents of Makoto's carriage, a peculiar fruit purportedly discovered in a mist-shrouded village, which he managed to sell for a whopping sum of 500 gold. Eager to secure their freedom, the cunning thief compels Rinen to pilfer the gold from Makoto. Torn between gratitude for Makoto's kindness and the dire circumstances her sister faces, Rinen reluctantly agrees, harboring an inner turmoil. The weight of her decision burdens Rinen, for she detests the notion of betraying someone who showed her such kindness. Yet, driven by her deep love for her sister, she feels compelled to proceed. Observing their actions with a discerning gaze, Makoto vehemently condemns the unforgivable deeds of the thieves. Meanwhile, the girls find themselves taken aback as they discover that Ace's unexpected appearance harbors ulterior motives, as he is, in fact, the enigmatic leader of the very thieves they sought to escape from. This brings an end to our episode. If you enjoyed our video, don't forget to subscribe our channel, Any Explainer.